Hello, I'm Kyle,
I'm Griffin.
and this is the Cedar Log.
The information for this episode comes from Pilgrims in Khaki, a history of the oldest known scouting event in the world by Michael G. Comfort. The Valley Forge Pilgrimage is an annual event that was started by the Delaware and Montgomery Counties Council, then passed down to Valley Forge Council and later to Cradle of Liberty Council. It may be the oldest continuously held scouting event in the country and possibly the world.
The event has origins in the dream of Reverend W. Herbert Burke, who wanted to build a chapel in memory of George Washington in Valley Forge. In 1903, the cornerstone for what would become the George Washington Memorial Chapel was laid. It would take until 1918 to finish the chapel and raise all the funds needed to finish the project.
Reverend Burke held a memorial service at the chapel and invited various local patriotic organizations to join him in this. In 1913, the Boy Scouts of America were invited to take part. The Scouts hiked into Valley Forge and took part in this memorial service. Then, in 1914, over 300 Scouts from Valley Forge and Philadelphia Council took part in the pilgrimage. This year also established the event as an annual tradition.
In 1915, the Scouts program began at 10 a.m., followed by campfires lit behind the chapel at 1 p.m. Rev. Burke then made an address at 3:30, followed by more programs. Some Scouts hiked over to the park the prior day and spent the night in the parish house of the chapel. This is the first known time that Scouts slept at Valley Forge overnight as part of the pilgrimage. In the 1920s and 30s, the program was mostly unchanged. The Scouts hiked around the park, visited various historic sites, and prepared lunch in the park. A memorial service marked the end of the day.
Interestingly, by 1931, a local paper reported that 3,900 Scouts attended the 19th annual pilgrimage. Then, in 1932, the event increased to 8,000 in attendance since it was the bicentennial of George Washington's birth and the 20th annual pilgrimage. However, another paper reported that 9,000 were in attendance, with 5,000 from all parts of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Eastern Maryland, and the District of Columbia.
An additional 10,000 others came to see General John Blackjack Pershing, who was the guest of honor. For those who don't know, General Pershing was the commander of the American Expeditionary Forces on the Western Front in World War I. Also in attendance that year was also Daniel Carter Beard, one of the founders of the BSA. The Honor Guard wore white OA Service Corps armbands and was composed of 4 senior members of Delmont Lodge 43.
General Pershing arrived at 10 a.m., escorted by the cavalry of Valley Forge Military Academy, members of the American Legion, and scouting officials. A 19-gun salute fired from a cannon at the chapel greeted the general. Then, a scout parade a mile long passed by with 128 American flags and more than 100 troop flags. A speech from the general was then broadcasted via radio at 11:30.
Unfortunately, in 1934, Reverend Burke passed away. His loss was greatly mourned, and from 1934 to the 1950s, the Scouts laid a wreath at his grave. The pilgrimages of the 1930s still included hikes around the park, but they began at Defender's Gate. The Scouts who participated in various competitions, and when the weather allowed, they had massive snowball fights across the open fields of the park.
And now to Luke for a quick message from the committee.
Hello, everyone. First things first, if you have anything of historical significance to scouting in general, please feel free to reach out to us at history@unamilodge.org, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. In other news, Unami Lodge as a whole has so many events coming up this spring that you must check out our website, unamilodge.org. And you can find events like Spring Service 1, Spring Service 2, Unami University, and Conclave. You can also check out the Unami Lodge virtual trading post at unamilodge.org. You can scroll to the bottom and press trading post, where you can get new patches, you can get apparel, you can get all different types of cool things that Unami Lodge offers. So thank you, and let's get back to the history.
In 1936, an award was presented at the pilgrimage to scouts who reached tenderfoot. 600 scouts earned this award that year, and 70 troops were presented a pilgrimage ribbon for the qualifying in the Investor Achievement Contest. In 1938, a new 4-year award was presented to the scouts who were active members for at least 4 years. In 1940, another award called the Valley Forge Scout was presented to the scouts who earned their tenderfoot.
In 1942, the first pilgrimage held during World War II was attended by 6,000 and saw 1,003 new scouts receive their Valley Forge Scout Award. In 1943, due to the gas rationing, the 9 districts held events at historical locations in their local area. A delegation of 46 Eagle Scouts and Tenderfoot Scouts held their own pilgrimage at the Woodland Chapel in Valley Forge.
In 1944, the pilgrimage was attended by several hundred scouts from the Central and Pottstown districts. Both areas had easy access to a railroad passenger line, and since there was a station at Valley Forge, the gas ration was not a problem. In 1945, 3,500 scouts attended, and it was a unique year. A ceremony was held to honor former scouts in the armed forces, which included 2,500 scouts and 40 Gold Star scouts who lost their lives in the service.
In 1947, the pilgrimage was postponed to March 8th due to severe weather for the first time in history. 1948 marked the beginning of the annual Valley Forge encampment. Only troops that earned the National Camping Award in 1947 could send scouts to the encampment, and a cap of 2 scouts per troop was placed. The tradition of presenting a silver tenderfoot pin to new scouts was replaced with a neckerchief slide, and sometime after the 1950s, the recognition was discontinued.
In 1949, 300 scouts participated in the encampment. The event remained largely the same for the next few decades. In 1959, a new tradition that continues today of issuing a patch to show who attended the pilgrimage. The patch from each year depicts a different scene from the winter of 1777 to 1778, or a prominent figure from the Revolution.
In the 1960s and 70s, participants from the Delaware and Montgomery counties would gather at opposite ends of the park and then come together in a big procession of hundreds of American and troop flags. In 1964, this procession was made up of 9,000 marchers and 6 scout bands. Also that year, the encampment was opened to explorers. In time, it would be open for scouts 14 or older, and then for all scouts regardless of age.
1976 marked the bicentennial of the United States, and the pilgrimage featured Revolutionary War reenactment groups. These groups put on an extensive program for the scout. Due to 3 national jamborees and many council-wide camporees, accidental damage had been done to many archaeological sites. Thus, the encampment was moved off the actual site of the Continental Army's encampment in 1978.
Thanks to the dedication of many volunteers and assistants from park rangers, the Valley Forge pilgrimage is still held to the present day.
The Cedar Log is a production of the Unami Lodge 1 History Committee. The script for the series was done by Reese and Michael G. Comfort. Audio and editing by Luke. Video by Reese and hosted by Kyle and Griffin. A special thank you to Michael G. Comfort for letting us use his publication, Pilgrims in Khaki, a history of the oldest known scouting event in the world.